Okay, so here I'm going to drive up now to, I've been sort of, hey, how's it going, Panda? I've been sort of edging the border of Vermont a lot because I keep kind of going around it, but I'm not really going through the state. So I'm going to go like to the up north, like the northernmost part of New York, basically, northeast. No one here. Oh yeah, I was just doing something. I maybe should have waited a minute before I started streaming. But here are the first nights. Alright, so let me get out of here. This is a nice town. This is Schenectady. I don't think I've ever been here before. I always confuse Schenectady and Poughkeepsie for some reason. Like, the names sort of sound similar, even if they're not at all with the same letter. But, yeah, it's a situation where, and that's what you kind of get with this too, is like, it's simulating that you're the passenger. So a lot of my shorts videos, I use that as a joke, like, point of view that you're Absolutist Philosopher driver, or if I had more of a character limit, I could say like your Absolutist Philosopher Uber driver is doing all this, like, it's like, sir, this is an Uber drive, is what it would feel like when I'm talking about all this stuff. Like, it just feels kind of random. But okay, so let me think. What I was discussing last time was pretty good, but I was so tired in some of those sessions that it was like I had to take a break. So I wanted to show the whole trip, but then I had to like just mute it and stop talking for a little bit because I couldn't handle those Vermont hills make me sleepy or something. Like, I was so tired and just struggling to even do anything. So here, but no, we got to clown on Vermont a little bit, just all the weird facts about it. I didn't know it was that underpopulated. I never knew that, because the size of the state is decent. So I thought, okay, it had a moderate population, but it's like, it's 49th or 50th, which means what? Like Hawaii and Rhode Island and stuff like that, even it has less people than that? Like, I don't even understand how that's possible with how, small geographically they are. We got to be careful about going under bridges too, because we get it'll kill my Starlink internet. Right, I don't think that's happened yet, but it's happened with like a fast food drive-through when you go under the overhang, or with like filling gas. So I'll forget about that, and then I'll do that, and then the stream will crash or something because I go to fill gas or I go to do something. All right, so let me think here. Which concepts do I want to start with? Sort of like the absolutist way that they're personified, not by their physical initial state, but by thought, which means like they could see anything in anything, or they'd see the same thing everywhere. So they're not looking really at the initial. That's why they don't care about appearances too much, let's say, because it would be, it's just looking at everything fully, not just partially. So it would tell you that, it just is. It just is a natural part of life. You can appreciate it, but it's different than the fact that society tries to censor and control that so much leads to the opposite interpretation, which is now people become obsessed with it and fixate on it in a way that they wouldn't otherwise, right? So it's kind of glorified and gratified in a certain way because it's controlled so much. If it was just free and open, like, okay, society is a nudist colony, people can just walk around naked, right? That would show more of a state of peace and balance and consistency, because it shows you, okay, people are at peace and comfortable with their natural selves and it's no big deal. And again, the sexual thing can happen with the right time and place, but it doesn't mean that that has to be all that you think about or the end all be all. So there's a certain irony to that. A society or a place like nudist colony, everybody walks around naked, or at least they can, would be less obsessed with sex than the society that does what we do, where we dress it up literally, and then we obsess over it more because we do that. Repression leads to obsession, my old saying, right? So hey, I'm from New York, or at least I'm in New York right now too, but so this is like more eastern New York. This is Schenectady going up towards, I don't even know what town it's called, but wait, let's just Yeah, this town seemed really nice. I like these sort of middle ground, like suburban towns that feel like they have a small town vibe, but they also have a lot of the big stores and stuff. Versus like some of these places are like either like some of the Vermont was like really too rural almost, or even or it might be too urban and too annoying, right? So it's kind of in between. So I kind of like that one. So I had been coming from Albany there. What is the time right now? It is 2:56. Yeah, I should get to where I'm going by about 5, so it should be about a 2-hour drive. That's sometimes how I navigate. Like, Walmart is my compass. It's like I try to go to a place with a Walmart because I know if there's a Walmart there, there's going to be other things there, right? So then I'm looking in Vermont and there's only like 6 Walmarts, and it's like, oh shit. So I gotta plan around that because there's like this big vacuous hole of emptiness between all of, each of them, where nobody lives there and it's just mountains, or I don't know what the deal is, or farmland. So that's a pretty funny. This is how Americans value stuff. Like, is there a McDonald's there? Is there a Walmart there? Like, this is our quality of life barometer. And make a skit like that where I'm holding like a compass. It'll point one direction to McDonald's, it'll point one direction to Walmart. Okay, so, and guess what? The capital there doesn't have a McDonald's, apparently. Alright, so that, again, like the absolutists would see objectively the nature of a process everywhere. So appearances wouldn't have much value to them. And the reason why is because appearances wouldn't have much value. And the reason why appearances wouldn't is because they're only necessary to cover something up or to portray something a certain way, which on the human level you can be self-aware and kind of analyze, okay, well, the person is dressing that way or looks that way by choice, and they maybe thought about it carefully, they curated it exactly, so it's like, are you going to be controlled by the image that they present, which they could present any image, really? So it's a twofold fallacy, right? On one hand, like somebody spends hours doing makeup and dress up and planning that all out. So now if you react a certain way based on that, then it's like, oh, you're being controlled by that image that they curated for themselves. Doesn't mean that really represents who they are or anything, right? Anybody can dress any way or not. And on the flip side, for somebody who's aware of that nature of the process and doesn't care, or either they're aware and they don't care, or maybe they're unaware, they don't know any better, is often the phallus duality fallacy, like emperor has no clothes. Or even like it's for some other reason, right? Like they look that way or something because of some condition they have, some medical issue. Like, so in other words, you're judging it by something that has no impact one way or the other. Either it's something that they didn't choose, that they can't control, that has no real impact on their real behavior, right? Like, oh, they walk a certain way and you'll focus on that, but it's because, oh, their leg is injured or something, right? It's kind of like it doesn't really define you, but people are kind of unwilling to be puzzled. The absurdist concept of like they'd rather go with that non-credible initial appearance than nothing at all, because you don't want to just be, well, the unknown. People are variable, so we can't define them. So instead of trying to figure it out, we don't have time for that, so we overextend and we say we're going to define them by their initial superficial appearance fully, and that's where you're kind of tricked, right? So because of the unwillingness to be puzzled, and because you don't have time to consider and think things through, which maybe you have to question your whole life sense of value then, but you're going to value things based on appearances, even though those appearances are carefully curated by people or by corporations or whatever. So it's like, does that really matter? So it's like, this person spent hours in the makeup dress up room to look that way. Then they come out on stage or whatever, and then you say, oh, they look so good, they look so beautiful. But if you had sat there in that room with them watching the makeup be done and see how it came to be, like the origin point fallacy, now you'd be a little skeptical or less impressed. You're like, well, anybody could do that. Anybody could just sit there and wear the makeup and do that. So are you appreciating them, in which case the makeup and dress up wouldn't matter because anybody could do that or anybody could not do it? Or are you appreciating that process, which again anybody could theoretically do, and it kind of defeats the purpose a little bit. And so right, so that's one element. It's the fact that that's what this leads to too. People will be fascinated kind of with where I am and where I'm driving half the time, more so than even what I'm talking about. But I don't mind doing it. It gives them more kind of context and flavor than just me showing like a notepad or something. But I never really liked the whole IRL thing. But it's still consistent with like my non-desire to do the cult of personality face cam type thing. That is really wild, that 10-foot. Have George Marathon stand on some big shoes and he's gonna bump his head. But yeah, or that could be a challenge. Try to jump and touch it, which might seem crazy, but like if you're 6 feet, you only have to jump 4 feet. Like, I don't know how hard that really is to do, but no, it's like people want to be controlled by the process, but they don't want to be aware that they're controlled by it. They want to fluff it up. So again, you're tricked by that initial mindedness that you want to value things like on the surface level because you want to come to a quick, easy conclusion. But then you get tricked by it because, again, it's carefully curated, easily controlled, manipulated, not really credible or representative of the reality behind it. Arguably even the opposite. The fact that it's necessary that you have to dress something up so much and focus on appearances shows you, oh, maybe something's being covered up. Something's being, overcompensated for. Clifton Park. I had seen this when I was looking for something else, but I didn't know exactly where it was. So here's the thing, okay, so again, you focus on appearances. Let me explain this once more. Like, they're not inherent, right? So like the way somebody looks, it's kind of similar to like social contrivance and personalities and stuff. Okay, so let me start with appearances. The way that somebody looks in modern society or in, everyday life is not naturally how they look. It could be makeup, it could be clothing, it could be other things, right? So it's not really them. So is that really a good indicator of their nature or their personality? It's how they want to present themselves. It's how they want to come off, right? It's maybe even how they would like to define themselves, but it doesn't actually adequately give you any credible information, right? They could easily look that way, but that could misrepresent who they are, either intentionally or just incidentally, right? It doesn't have to really be accurate or based on anything, because really, what does an appearance have to do with it, right? Their behavior. The two aren't connected, but we'd like to connect them because we have preconceived notions that we're controlled by. We're very superficial. We're very, again, initial-minded, which whenever I say that, it just means like the senses. Like, you're only thinking about like what you see, not even the nature of the process of how it came to be. Like, you see somebody, oh, you look so good today. But, they can say, oh, I look the same every day. It's just, oh, what I'm wearing looks good. But anybody could wear anything, anytime. So it's like, does that really matter? So are you appreciating them, or are you appreciating something external that is variable? Hey, Ivan, may your day be blessed. Oh, thanks, yeah. So, yeah, the thing is that, again, do appearances really matter? So they can either deceive you, like somebody can deliberately present themselves a certain way, again, either superficially or even socially, like, those are two things. You can wear anything, you can look any way, that doesn't have anything to do with your actions, right? But people want to believe that and be taken in by that because they don't think any more deeply about it. So the origin point fallacy is one thing. If you knew how much money they spent on the clothing or whatever to look that way, if you knew how much time and effort they put in the bathroom and the makeup and mirror and stuff, you would not be as impressed by it, or you wouldn't be moved by it because you saw how it came to be. So then it's like, oh, what's the big deal? Anybody can do that, or it's kind of vain that you took the time to do that. So you're taking it at face value, but it was carefully curated and had a lot of effort put into it. And so it's similar to how you're controlled by the media and by government. It's kind of like you take it at face, like an ad, you take it at face value, but you don't know how much, well, you can be aware, but like you don't see exactly how much effort and cynicality is put into it. This board meeting where they're trying to psychologically use all these techniques to get you to buy a product, but you just see it at face value, like, oh, haha, that's funny or that's interesting. But if you saw the cynical creation that goes into it, you would be more skeptical and weary, like, oh, okay. Like it's hard to explain, but it's like how socially somebody comes across. Like, oh, you don't want to be aware that they're using like some technique on you to try to sell you something, right? But everybody always is. So, you know, this one guy's like your friend and you socially talk or whatever, but even that is a technique. Like, that's where the absolutists will sometimes reveal the nature of the process. Like, it'll be projected like, oh, they lack the ability, or oh, they're doing this, but they would be neutral and not use that and let the process speak for itself, such that they're not controlled by it or controlling others with it. So, for example, they would just let it speak for itself and try to remove the need, which is kind of ironic in the modern day too. Like, pretend like, oh, self-checkout. So now you're removing that human element, but by that logic, then you say, okay, we don't need that in the first place, like to specify it and to have that under the banner of that store or whatever. So really what you're getting to is the self-governance, that you don't need any of that. It's just people are lazy and weak and, you know, bred in circuses type thing. But again, so let's look at social contrivance too, the same way. That the point is it's not naturally occurring, right? So their appearances are not how they naturally are. So pretend everybody walked around naked, or just in the kind of plain drab clothing or the same clothing. It wouldn't matter, because that's really how they look. That's really how they are. So you're defining yourself by something technologically based that isn't you, that doesn't define you, that doesn't have anything. In the same way, social contrivance, I can point to leaders throughout history, for example, and those leaders would be like, you know, oh, that guy was a good speaker, but then they turn out to be a dictator or something like that. You can find all kind of examples. So should you take that seriously and at face value? So what happens, unfortunately, is people are a bit stupid with this, and they'll say like, oh, but that was just that guy. That guy was a bad guy. Not that the nature of the process is flawed, like, but the next people are okay, or the ones, you know, in our era ruling us are okay. It's like, it's not about the individual, it's about the nature of the process, that kind of like how people say power corrupts and stuff. You shouldn't take anybody at face value. It shouldn't come down to a cult of personality contest of that. It should come down to, okay, be skeptical of everybody, and just they're a useful idiot, and, you know, but it shows you that people kind of like to be controlled in that way by like a false absolute, whether it be God or something. They want like a false certainty over uncertainty, but that uncertainty still shows. It'll be like, oh, it's a false absolute state, but then it requires constant distraction, overcompensation, conflict, and contrivance. You know, so the, you know, zero-sum means gratification, right, of like, oh, it's supposedly civilized people or whatever. Oh, it only required the privilege of empires or, you know, resources and overcompensations to do that, right? So it's easy to act self-righteous when you're doing that, but if you started net zero sum, it wouldn't be that way. So, and it doesn't rationalize the specific contrivance state that you're in, but the imbalance will show. Like, people have to distract themselves, they have to drink, smoke, all these other things, like, or at least those things indicate a non-value subversive, inconsistent state. Right, like a true value state would be at peace and wouldn't need to do those things. So the one thing also that we consider here is the fact that neutrality is a false negative, because the contrivance state requires constant reinforcement, overcompensation, outward insistence, you know, reinforcement through externality. So that would allow you to see the truth of it, like, by simply being neutral, you would expose the nature of the process. But by the same people who value it and practice it, would be negative to them if you simply make them aware. So it's selective awareness. Like, by simply not overcompensating for it, you're at fault, and that makes them selectively aware, whereas normally they're not aware. So it's not that you want to exploit them and make them unaware as well. You want to make them aware, but have them be aware all the time. But because you make them aware selectively, it'll be held against you, like shoot the messenger, instead of against the nature of the process. So by their own logic, it would be negative, and it requires that buffer of social contrivance overcompensation, which is kind of unsound and arbitrary. So people don't look the way they naturally are, and so it's carefully curated process should you take it seriously. Same thing with social contrivance. People in nature don't speak. They don't know a language. They don't have, you have to learn that. You have to be taught that. You have to be taught social norms. You have to do all these things. So it's not naturally occurring. And again, it's easy to do it in an artificial way so the problem is it'll be personalized, like, oh, but that was just that one leader throughout history, or this one person who's artificial. It's like if you, this is the problem, right? The absolutists would, let's say, try to reveal the nature of a process as artificial, so people shouldn't take it so seriously, but it'll be blamed on them. So when you see somebody throughout history, like, oh, we value people and we trust people and we, socially value them, right? And take them at face value. But then you see throughout history all the times that's been manipulated, like, oh, this person seemed charismatic, but then they turned out to be a dictator or something like that. So it shows you, oh, that's all it takes. Somebody could believe their own BS, or they could just be pragmatic, or they could just be, they could train or practice in doing that, tell people what they want to hear. So it's not a very credible process. So you would see that from history, but you would say, oh, well, that was just that one guy who was bad, not just the nature of that process is flawed. And the same thing even here, like where an absolutist would try to reveal something to you, it basically works as follows. It works because you're able to again, you reveal the nature of the process. So like you're showing, oh, here's how it's artificial, but then it'd be projected and blame you. Oh, that just means you just don't get it, or that means that's your fault, you're just artificial, or that means you'll be labeled and attacked. So it's a false absolute process where even when somebody's doing that to demonstrate here's how the process is not credible and how it's flawed and how you're controlled by it, it'll be somehow projected that, oh, it was just that one person in history who was bad and took advantage of the process and exploited the process, or it's just your fault that you're not adequately overcompensating for the process, or that it's your fault, not the fault of the process. So, right, you reveal how this process is artificial and flawed, but instead of people seeing that, they'll see you and say, oh, that's just your fault. But either way, the consistent truth is there that it's a process that can be exploited, that is exploited, that does control you, that does deceive you, that has done that throughout history. So what does that mean? Like, should you take it seriously or not? But instead it becomes a contest on the surface level of, well, who can present it the best, and we take them all for granted at face value. Even though it's always the same process that you're being deceived by, you defer on that level, like a true value, meritocracy, accountable state. That wouldn't be necessary. And the reason why is because I'm trying to charge my headphone while I'm driving, since I always forget to do it otherwise, that stupid Bluetooth thing. And some of these drives are long, so I sometimes want to listen to something a little bit. Hang on, where the heck did it go? I have two of them actually, but they're both uncharged. I'm going to react to that movie at some point, the Send Help one, because occasionally I want to do reaction stuff, but I might do it like when I'm just parked in my car instead of driving. So, well, part of the fun is being able to do it while I'm driving, I guess. But so let me see if I can find it in this bag, but I have no idea where my stuff is. Like, okay, here's one. Okay, we got one. I've been saying that for like a week, and I keep forgetting to charge them because I have to charge so many things when I'm driving. Right, I'm using my Starlink. I'm using I'm using my Starlink. I'm using my phone. I'm sometimes using my computer. So it is a lot to keep track of. So the thing is that, okay, we got one of them. Let me see if I can find the other one. I'm just like digging in a bag in my passenger seat while I'm doing this. Yeah, see, a lot of these areas you end up not even being able to take okay, I found it. take main roads because there aren't any, like in Vermont or whatever. I feel like nobody knows how to use traffic circles. It's supposed to be like whoever gets there first gets to go, but it'll be like you're waiting for somebody else and then somebody behind them will just go anyway, even though they got there after you did. Right, like nobody actually follows it exactly right. Okay, so we gotta go here. I like to get on a good stretch of road before I really get into anything, but it doesn't really matter. Yeah, it's about a 2-hour drive even still. And so we're kind of edging Vermont. I got to use that as a title. Absolutist Philosopher edges Vermont as they open your eyes to the nature of the contrivance that controls you. Come save us, Bernie Sanders, save us from the truth. But I respect his independent career, but I hate his Democratic, because like it's a sellout, right? He was an independent thinker. He was, sort of driving some of that, but then, he sells out to the Democrats just because, like, he became the very thing he swore to destroy, kind of. And that Trump is, like, playing with house money with the fact that he just doesn't care the whole time. That's what people don't get about him. He just never cared. So in that sense, it's still like a net positive, because he could have just as easily not done any of that. He didn't have to run for president. People come up with this funny theory about like, he did it to avoid going to prison. Nobody was going after him for anything, right, ever. They were even sucking up to him and stuff, like Oprah and others. So it's like, nobody was coming after him. Only when he became president, he made himself a target. So at least that point, you can't really say, right, that, he did it to get out of something. Like what? So I'm actually going to try to charge my thing here. Whatever it is. This is a long ass stretch. This is 130 mile. Wow. This will be the whole drive, I guess. 130 mile stretch of just this road. Let's see if we find anything interesting on these food exits here, like something you don't see normally. Gonna have like whole battery pack set up with this shit, like turn your car into like some sort of I don't even know. It just starts to look funny after a while. You've got so many different things going on at once. You got the car battery lighting, cigarette lighter charging one thing, then you got that charging something else, then you have two plugs in one thing, then my computer is also charging something else. And this is what happens when you're on the road a lot. You have to keep doing that, like this infinite battery loop that you're trying to create. So that is the most valuable asset in the whole car for somebody who travels. It's not anything else, but it's the cigarette lighter thing, because that actually has enough power to charge a lot of things, like your computer. Even you need like an inverter and stuff, but still, there's no other way to do it, right? Then I can't charge my computer. Yeah, some of these routes are pretty scenic, not bad. And so, where did those things go? Here we go, the stupid headphones here. Yeah, so we gotta do that. Either like react to something specifically like that, like I was saying, or even just like right now I could be listening to music or something on there, but I don't want to play it so that you can hear it, because whatever, copyright stuff. but I'd be willing to at least whatever. Or I can just react to random videos and stuff. This is a pretty nice looking area too, Saratoga Springs. I've been there a couple times. I don't think I've been really this far north though, like too much after that. I forget what area even starts to be called, like Plattsburgh is somewhere up there. It makes it seem like I'm going slow, but like I'm going 70. These people are so crazy. This is what it looks like to drive alongside the Vermont border from the New York side, I guess. This road is all going to be like concurrent with that. But if you try to cross over directly at any point here, there's water, so you might have to go. There'll be like very few access entry points, I guess. So one thing, okay, let's look at this concept. The design of society is, again, always on the lowest common denominator, mass-produced thing. So it's not like it's not that, something couldn't be done. It's that it can't be done on a mass scale, but then you'll gratify that and act like that's the norm, or that's what you want, or that's a desired state. Not just that, like, even public education, right? It's done in such a way that it's not the best, but it's the best you can get on the mass scale, so that mass scale indicates a lack of value that you have, because right, it's just an overextension. Imagine the standard, right? Like, let's say, okay, absolute value, you wouldn't have kids until you were sure that the state was going to be the absolute best, but that's not how people think at all. They're just hedonistic, stimuli acme preservers, the way that I call it. So it's unfortunate, but appearances are not to be trusted, and then that can be projected, framed. Oh, but you just lack the ability to have good appearances. Like, what if you do? So I'm a supermodel, I'm the world's most attractive person, but then I would still say appearances can be deceiving, or like part of the reason why you look the way you look is maybe you don't care about that. So you don't work out, you don't care. It'd be framed as like an excuse. You're only saying that because of that state that you're in. But what if it's the opposite? Did the state that you're in determine your perspective, or did your perspective determine your state that you're in? But you thought about it, and you thought, oh, I don't care about that. I don't value that. I'm not trying to be a model or something. And so then then it'll be used to discredit you. Oh, you're only saying that because you don't look so good. But you don't look so good because you don't value appearances. So which is it? Right? Which came first is the willingness and the thought. You have to think about it and decide for yourself. And so one of the things that comes along with that is the simple fact that the amount of effort you put into it and things like that, so you neglect the insignificant. So that's kind of like, again, absolutists don't value appearances, etc. Not only because, okay, they're not credible and they don't serve any purpose really, but it's even more than that. You might think, oh, why not just value them anyway? But the only reason why you need to value them is as an overcompensation for a subversive half-mass state. So you're doing it in service of that contrivance. You're saying, we'll give corporations a monopoly over nature, et cetera, and then we'll concede to this non-value half-mass human function state where you're not reaching your potential, you're not fully self-aware, you're not thinking all the time, you're not being objective, and then you overcompensate for that half-mass state with appearances. And the reason why you do that is because of the simple fact that you'd overcompensate with appearances, and so in the course of doing that, right, again, you only need to do that because of that subversive state that you're in. So pretend you didn't care about appearances. What would be the problem with that? Well, it would reveal the truth and total objective reality of something, instead of curating a censored kind of slice of it that's necessary to reinforce the subversive state. So then you would think, well, now we're more at peace with our potential and our natural self. We don't really need appearances. We don't really need to be, trying to show off and gratify to flashy. We don't need to do those things. We can do anything. We can sleep on the ground. We can be free. We can live in nature. We could be free is basically the point. Instead of, oh no, we're enslaved by this because we're kind of trying to portray ourselves a certain way and trying to prove ourselves a certain way. But that's just a myopic fragment of the total self. No, so it hurts the credibility of that contrived state that, oh, it looks good on the surface, is the way that you might perceive it. The way the absolutist would look at it would be not that it looks good on the surface, that it needs to hide behind those appearances, that it needs to overcompensate, that it needs to distract with them, that it needs to not think about the larger process behind it and use the surface level to control. Right. You got to go all the way up to exit 37, so we're at exit 15. So this is one of the longer single stretches we've done, like on one road. Normally you'll go for 50 miles and you have to switch something. This is just straight, 122 miles straight left. That's kind of crazy. I guess there is nowhere to switch to because again we're on the border of the state. So now the weather looks like it's getting gloomy though. So the thing is that I keep trying to change what I'm charging and stuff, which I maybe shouldn't do. But no, the point is that, okay, let me demonstrate that point again. So appearances and social contrivance are not credible, and they can be used to control you, manipulate you, deceive you. Right? That is proven by history, that's proven all the time, but instead it turns into a selective basis of like, oh, that's just you, and other people aren't like that, and they're not like that, but it's a variable. Right? People are not static as much as they maybe try to define themselves that way. Anybody can do anything or say anything at any time, although I guess after the amount of indoctrination that people go through, it's meant to be that they're mindless, predictable, kind of easily controlled animals, but that's really what it comes down to, is that like, you're free so you can do anything. So on the flip side of that, you can be weary and you wouldn't be able to trust anybody because it's like, oh, they could just be doing that. Again, to portray that appearance. So it's like thinking is the enemy because it's like, well, if you make people think or self-aware, then you're the enemy because now they become aware of all the negative possible things people could be doing, or that, oh, it could just be artificial. It could just be artificial, but you made them aware that it could be artificial, so that's the bad part. But that's the initial layer that sometimes is the problem. And then the other thing is the fact that the other thing is the fact that, you have those layers of control. So again, to personalize that is kind of missing the point because, okay, you have the best appearances in the world, you're the best social, whatever. Like, so you can either be aware of the process and then try to exploit people with it, like people in power often do, or you can be aware of the nature of the process and try to reveal it to other people. But if you control people with it, they enjoy that. They kind of like that in a way, right? They want to be deceived. Whereas if you reveal it to them, it makes them uncomfortable. Again, it's easier to control people than convince them they're being controlled. So they would rather be controlled and just not think about it than realize, oh, you're being controlled, and now facing that, right? So the problem is that it puts you in a position where it's not a credible basis. So again, if I was to demonstrate that to you, like, here's how this process is artificial, and I'm showing it to you, but it'd be like, oh no, that just means you lack the ability of that process, or that's somehow negative on you, but you're missing the point that it's not about them, and nor do they want anything. Not only do they not want anything, they're even sacrificing the benefit of maintaining that artifice to demonstrate its nature to you so that you're not deceived by it by others, but instead it's projected, oh, you just don't get it, emperor has no close fallacy. But again, that conditionality is part of the problem. So all it would take then is somebody else like that person that you're projecting, who isn't so generous as to, is one of two things, isn't so stupid or obvious that, oh, they make it so obvious to you, the nature of the process of how you're being controlled. So either they might not be that stupid, they're more clever and subtle, so then it works, or they're not so honest that they're trying to make you aware of the nature of the process. So it's like that artifice that's projected onto others. Like, oh, you must have this incentive, right? And now here's how you go, about it or not. Not that you don't have that incentive. Again, like the self-governance, unconditional, neutral, free state of being. So it's a situation where, right, that projection is necessary to control, rule by omission, protocol, like I've talked about. So one of the things that happens is, that's necessary to control. It's projected, not concerned with truth. It also puts you in a position to, that's funny, like I'm getting sensory deprivation sometimes from doing this. Not that I've done long sessions before, but I don't know, I've been kind of tired lately, where like I want to react to something or take breaks in the middle, because that's kind of good. Then I can take a break from this while doing React content of some kind, so I don't have to end the stream, I just keep going. So yeah, it's a situation where everything is like reduced to a half-mast state, and it's like this collective self-created conflict. You're trying to use X post facto justification of a mass number of people to rationalize a subversive state where you're controlled and inhibited, etc. And so hiking up one of the Adirondack Mountains in this weather. That sort of thing I guess I wouldn't mind showing, but, well, I don't know. The process isn't credible, but if you demonstrate that, it's your fault, shoot the messenger, not that they can easily be controlled by it or that they are controlled by it by others. They take that as granted, false absolute, rather than be made aware of the nature of the process. So what it means is they're kind of vouching for the state that's absolute, so it should be utopian perfect. Otherwise it should be held constantly accountable, or again, like a more meritocracy basis that more meritocracy in the sense that, you wouldn't need that, and you might think, oh, it's innocent, but that's where the concept of separation comes in that I talk about. Like, separate them completely, then don't use it as dependent over standard pretense, like social contrivance as a way to do that. Because like people are taught and trained to underestimate their own ability, their own potential, their own, objective mind. So it's like, oh, we're just helpless and powerless before that, but you're really not. You just let yourself be. So part of the way to control people is to convince them they already are something that you want them to become. Like, oh, it's not that you've been indoctrinated to be that way and you're held back and you're inhibited and society restricts you so that you can curate the outcome and then uses that to justify that you're in that state. It's the opposite, right? Like it's trying to create that state, it's trying to restrict you, it's trying to inhibit you, and then you go along with it, even you defer to it, but that doesn't validate anything because it's a curated state, which again, arbitrarily, especially throughout history, you can see that could lead to basically just about anything. So again, I'm trying to explain this one concise way, like again, appearances or social contrivance are not credible. They're not tied directly to person actions and behavior. They are artificial, so it could be different every day, and it doesn't define the person. Basically, what it defines is how much effort you choose to put in to put up that artifice. So, I appreciate how much effort you put in to deceive me or to put up that appearance, but that's all it is just an appearance, or the amount of undue emphasis you place. So it kind of is an unthinking perspective that requires or assumes other people are unthinking. What if they are self-aware, right? Kind of like what I'm doing now. Then would you take that seriously? Because, well, they're aware of the nature of the process and you're aware of the nature of the process, so there's really no need now, is there? And so if you truly value it, you wouldn't beat around the bush, but it's a way to almost fool the self or gratify or overcompensate for an unthinking state. Because if you're aware of the nature of the process, then you wouldn't take that seriously, or it wouldn't be necessary, really. Right, anything anybody else could say to you, you could just say everything to yourself. So you're reducing your mind and your being to this externality kind of thing. You might think, they're like placing, whatever, deferring to people, but wait, I did go up this way though before, maybe not too far though, maybe not this far. Yeah, it's a situation where, it's just people are easily deceived, again, by appearances, not tied to anything credible, easily curated, manipulated, misrepresent, or doesn't define the totality of a person, more just ways to label and kind of control people. So again, somebody could just be aware of the nature of the process and not care, or they could be, they don't value it, it doesn't matter, they're trying to reveal that it is artificial. But again, that initial basis is what people are controlled by, so it kind of shows you the lack of credibility of mass appeal too. It's like, everybody's exposed to the same indoctrination and the same influence, and therefore they value that. Did they value that because it's the highest standard or something credible or something valuable, or did they value it simply on an ego basis and preconception that, they're familiar with it, and therefore if you're familiar with something, even if the way you became familiar is kind of forced or contrived or incidental, not like by choice, then you insist upon it just because you're familiar already. So whoever controls your perceptions that way, like mainstream media, controls you, and then, so there's a need to sort of pray and discredit because objectivity or inherent value or accountability can't exist. And everything is about bypassing that inherent state in a subversive way. So the whole irony is, again, absolutists or minimalists wouldn't even want anything. They don't want anything, but that nothing that they want includes not being inhibited on the basis of some artificial projection that's needed to control people. Right. ego base is necessary to control. It's sort of like, oh, you're competing over that in a subversive state, right? You surrender your inherent potential and self-awareness and just surrender that and let monopoly over nature be taken. It's already established. Everything is absolute, and you just kind of concede that. So you don't think everything, you're not self-aware, everything's already established, it's absolute, take it at face value, everything's already monopolized, so you just concede all of that. You concede all physical value by letting nature itself be monopolized by corporations and government. You concede mental value by not really thinking. You just kind of take everything again at face value, and so now it becomes a contest of contrivance of the appearances. But again, that's only necessary to overcompensate for that subversive state in the first place. So they kind of project and show how they're controlled then in doing that. That you're the bad guy for not overcompensating, or you're the bad guy for making them aware, right? Selectively aware, but not that it's their fault for not being aware all the time. But that would be the goal of what you're trying to even do. Whitehall is in Vermont, I thought, because I thought, well, yeah, I mean, Rutland obviously is. That'd be like a fun challenge to do, like, don't do anything, or like, don't go anywhere to eat except for local places. Like, you're not allowed to go to any franchises, right, for like a month or something. And a lot of it for me is just convenience, and not even like, oh, I like fast food or something like that. I eat very plain food, or I'm very simple, but it can be just difficult. Like, I can't cook, and I like, you know, it can be. So it's more so about the convenience actually than what it is, right? I could almost care less at times. Similar to how the absolutists would do that. They don't care about reaction relief. They're just trying to remove the need so they can then be free, instead of being controlled at half mass by an inherent, right? The reductive, like the stimuli acme, for example, you could just remove the need, relieve it yourself, or not place any undue emphasis. Instead, you're controlled by it, and you base your whole life around it. Again, which you can choose to do, but not only is it not naturally occurring, but you're you'll suffer the conflict of contrivance with it, aware of the nature of the process. Like any standard or pretense that's used to control is then selectively applied. So there's that built-in incentive of like, there's the built-in incentive of the hierarchy that gets created, like, oh, then some people selective bypassing, nepotism, or you know, it applies to everybody, but then, oh no, now you'll selectively apply it, right? So everybody's guilty until proven innocent, and then we'll make some exceptions and compete over that, instead of it actually not being qualified in the first place. Yeah, you can find some good places to film stuff here, like at, nice scenic locations and stuff. contrivance is only necessary for that. So that's like the non-required, non-desire concept that I've talked about, where like you might think, oh, that's rude that you're not social, or you don't, place a lot of undue emphasis, or not friendly and stuff. But you're neutral, so it's not a negative. You're not. It'll be framed like you're being rude or something, but you're just like to the point. Do what's necessary. Let that speak for itself. Actions, not words, right? Because words get in the conflict of then it's arbitrary, it's endless, it's non-basic self, it's ego gratification, non-amalgam theory, whatever. But the point is it's not true value, right? If it was true value, then okay, you either value everybody everywhere, then you would value amalgam theory, you'd sacrifice, you wouldn't eat 3 meals a day before giving up a meal for somebody else halfway across the world starving, whatever, that. Or even on another level, like, okay, you value people around you, the nearness posture and stuff like that. But this cop is dirty. He's trying to get people going downhill. That's what this is. Like, that's the best place for, like, literally, you don't even have to be accelerating, but you'll go over the limit just because you're going down a hill. But basically, this cop is catching strays. But the thing is that, people are mindless kind of just human functions where they're just reduced to structure, no matter how elaborate that structure might happen to be. Oh, look, he heard me. He's watching the stream, he heard me, he's switching. He felt bad about it. Bro is, look at him. You'll see him go. Look at him, dude. Yeah, bro felt guilty about that downhill trap. I'm dead. Okay, so the thing is that basically you're in a position to, again, non-require, non-desire. You don't require or desire social contrivance back. You don't want anybody to be nice to you. You don't want to have anybody place undue emphasis on you, right? Like, so you're fine with other people not talking or just being directed to the point, and you want to be directed to the point, and that's only negative if you're in a non-value subversive overextended state. So they take it out on you, but it really shows you the flaw of the process, that it shouldn't require that. It shouldn't require social contrivance to overcompensate for a subversive state. So the real goal is to not be in that subversive state and let actions speak for themselves, so that there's no basis to control people, there's no basis to reduce them to a structure. So it might seem like a positive thing, but it's actually negative. It's like you're overcompensating for the symptom, but in the process reinforcing the disease. So you never address that subversive state. Like, there's no basis to monopolize nature. There's no basis to do any, everything's by force, and then there's no basis, to have monopoly over nature. There's no basis to specify something that would otherwise be inherent. There's really no basis. You're supposed to benefit from and exploit that instead of basically or wouldn't that have been proof that that guy was just speeding himself? Because he didn't have his lights on and he went so much faster than everybody else. So we just got on camera that this cop was clearly breaking the speed limit. Some of these hills, man. About an hour, 20 minutes left. The headphone is charging, so maybe at some point I'd like to try to do that. I'll either react to something or I'll at least listen to something. That's crazy. I'm so lazy to do it that I have to do it while I'm driving so that I don't forget. But the thing is that, again, so those things aren't credible appearances and stuff. Oh yeah, non-require, non-desire. So it's like, it's not about rude, it's about it's an unqualified state. So you're trying to say, let's just remove the need and do it in a zero-sum way. And it's like you're not vouching for the state, but you're trying to be done with it. Instead, it's like, oh, who can compete to overcompensate the most? When you're really saying, like, it's the absolutists want to remove the need for the process. Like, you don't want to really be in that, but you want to remove the need. So you're a doctor, but you don't want doctors to exist. You want to remove the need. That might be an idyllic idea, but you're not insisting upon it like you enjoy it or using that as some social thing. It's like you're looking at the big picture, the measure, the end process of like, okay, you don't want that, right? It's like negative that it's necessary, or look at this guy, not even indicating. He's like me sometimes. I just do that, but not even like this though. I'll do it in other lower speed areas sometimes. Yeah, the traffic on this road wasn't bad at all, even for a Friday. There's not a whole lot here, I guess, unless people are going out like to Canada. But no, it's like it's a subversive state. So it's like, oh, you like the ability to do the subversive state, not that you don't vouch for it, right? Not that you don't want to perpetuate it. So you might say, oh, you're benefiting from it, but it's more like you're forced to be a part of it, because if you don't, then everybody else is exploiting it or doing it, and then oh no, it becomes a contest like that. So you're tolerating it, but you're not vouching for it. And the reason why, again, it's in service of a subversive state, so unqualified empirical authority. You might think, oh, that defines you, but it's like you're rejecting the nature of the process. You ultimately, again, in this case, absolutist self-governance, and you'd want people to be free of a process, so you wouldn't want them to be grateful to you or to rely on you. You want them to be free of anything that would make them reliant on you, or free of this process and the structure itself. So you wouldn't want to be overcompensating or reinforcing that. You would want to, again, remove the need is the key absolutist phrase that I always talk about. So when I talk about the non-required, non-desire thing, what happens is neutrality is framed as a negative, but you're not outwardly, like, you're not talking trash to somebody and saying, like, let's define it. Okay, the pro, non, anti fallacy. Pro would be like, oh, you're super nice and upbeat and bubbly and complimenting the person, and then negative anti would be like, oh, you're cursing them out and yelling at them. The neutrality would be framed as a negative though, in a contrivance state. So like just simply being neutral, simply not saying anything, or just being to the point and direct, that would be framed as a negative. Because contrivance requires overcompensation, it will be personalized, like it's your fault for not overcompensating for the flawed process, unnatural, subversive, not absolute, exclusionary, and everything else. And so what that means is basically you are put in a position of, again, the emperor has the clothes fallacy of like, the process is absolute, even though you see the holes of it and you need the constant reinforcement overcompensation. But then it's blame shifted to the individual. Oh, it's your fault for not overcompensating or upholding that process. Not that the process itself is, again, like not absolute. It doesn't mean you can't still do it, but it's not absolute. So, and therefore no basis for outward insistence, and therefore, not, again, absolute exclusionary and everything else where you can kind of force it on other people. And so so the other point I was talking about is again, non-required, non-desire. You would say, so by being neutral, that'd be framed as a negative, and the reason why is because, again, contrivance requires that overcompensation, but more than that, so you'd be neutral and let the process speak for itself, and if that's negative, that means the process is negative, not you, or your failure to overcompensate. But also, it would mean that one of my things I never do. If there's a sharp curve like that and I'm gonna overtake a big truck, I just wait. Like, I'm not gonna do that, especially when it's windy and showing it is now. But the thing is that, okay, hang on. Alright, so what I'm saying is, you would be neutral and let the process speak for itself, right? So you shouldn't have to say anything, and you're to the point, you remove the need, you don't want anything, you're unconditional, zero-sum, you're trying to just do a zero-sum process to remove the need for it, not taking any special value or gratification in it, not extracting any ego from it, etc. So the point is that, right, so you're removing the need so you can do something else, so that you can also remove the need more efficiently, or you can basically do something else, right? Open up your measure that you have like a higher standard value, but again, not placing undue emphasis on a zero-sum process, just reaction relief to non-choice needs. So here's the thing. When you look at that neutral basis, right, what was the original point I was saying? It took a while to get here. But basically, it's the fact that you wouldn't expect it of others either. So yeah, you're not expecting people to be all socially nice and undue emphasis positive towards you, because you understand the nature of the process is artificial, it's not necessary, so you let the actions speak for themselves. So why is that a bad thing? It's only a bad thing when you're reduced to a half-assed aversive state that, again, it's not letting people live to their potential. They're basically, you're reduced to a half-assed state where, you're not allowed to do anything, you need permission to do anything, you're conceding value, monopoly over everything to big corporations, the government, etc., right? So when you have that, now it's needed as an overcompensation for that. So it would reveal the artifice and the conflict of that particular state, and only necessary by overextension, by a mass collective number of people, which you didn't create, so, but yet you're held accountable and controlled on that basis, right? And yet you don't truly value them either, because it's not amalgam theory. So it's just all dependent over extended pretense on X as zero-sum means kind of exuberance. And so now, getting back to that, so being neutral and letting the process speak for itself, and being efficient, trying to remove the need, it's zero-sum, and also it's about, again, there should be no need for it, right? The need would come from trying to specify something that's otherwise inherent. The need would come from some incentive or trying to control people. The need would come from, something else like that, which you wouldn't be trying to do in the first place. Again, the absolutists wouldn't be trying to do in the first place. So, but then it's on you for like revealing the nature of the process, or again, it's false duality projection, like, oh, you're trying to do that too, but you just lack the ability to do it, not that you're not trying to do it, and thereby revealing the artifice of everyone else or society itself that it is always trying to do that, right? So it's like the one who doesn't have the incentive, the one who's actually free or unconditional or objective or has some other standard or measure, they're attacked or projected for that incentive or reason, because they don't do that. They make it kind of the nature of the process that people are controlled by, they make it clear by not overcompensating for it. So they're used to the artifice, they're used to the overcompensation. So where it isn't there, they project it or they desire it, instead of, they're to be free of it, right? Now, if they're free of it, that structure that goes along with it would likely not be necessary, or wouldn't be like uniformly accepted and forced on others, basically. Oh, this guy, man, fucking. Why he's got to do that? Like you're going downhill and you're trying to. Okay, fine. You want to be like that? You're trying to race me going downhill when I'm trying to overtake you, like. you control people like that. Anytime somebody tries to overtake you, you keep speeding up, so you try to force them to go over the speed limit and get a ticket, or just go too fast. Like, all right. So the thing is that there's a couple things I want to do, and one of them is, let me try to wrap that point up once more, is just the like, let's look at the credibility fallacy in a second here. Like, what would it take? Like, okay, you're the world's first trillionaire, and you cured cancer, and you terraformed Mars, and you did all these things, but people would still find idiosyncrasies or personal things to attack about you. Does the credibility thing really matter then? That doesn't make everything you say right, but if it doesn't, then why even compete on that basis? Like, you should have a standard behind it. Right, then it's about the idea, not the individual, and again, non-require, non-desire. So you wouldn't socially contrive because it shouldn't be necessary in a sound, logical process. It's a way to overcompensate for an imbalanced subversive state. So ideally, okay, you remove the need for that. Because again, if you're aware of the nature of the process, then you wouldn't, be taken in by that either, or desire it. So you're aware of the nature of the process, and so you don't require it or desire it or do it yourself. So you're going to be neutral, but you don't mind, or you even prefer if others are neutral too, right? But there'll be negative reaction to you being neutral, as if, again, you lack the ability to do something, or it's somehow negative or compulsory. But you would care about actions rather than words. Like, you want to do something in an actual way that has an impact. So again, whether it be amalgam theory, or whether it be even nearness postulate, valuing other people, you would do it in a direct way with actions, not words, because words are they don't really have an impact, so you wouldn't want to use that as a placeholder, right? So again, it's lack of credibility. You see that throughout history. But again, you expose or reveal or show the artifice of a process, and if you do that, then guess what happens? You're at fault, shoot the messenger, not the process itself. And so one of the other things I said was, again, you'd be neutral, which would be framed as a negative by an outward insisting and driving state. But you also don't expect that from others. You're tolerating the unqualified specification of a contrivance process or whatever, but you don't really care for that either, because you see through it. You see, it's just a way to specify it. Because think about it like this, okay, so you're fine with neutrality right back, but instead it'll be like some little spite negative thing, because they're being all whatever, they'll be sort of petty about it or something, but you're okay with being neutral. You're okay with being neutral, and you're neutral, let the process speak for itself, and you're okay with others being that way too. You prefer that, so you're not requiring that thing. So the same thing, like social contrives overcompensation, because you're aware of the nature of the process, or you're either at peace with it, or you're tolerating it, deferring to it, but you're not vouching for it or treating it as an absolute, the same absolute that would then require constant overcompensation and reinforcement through externality through social contrivance, right? Undue emphasis. So the point with that also is the fact as follows. It's the fact that how interchangeable it is. Whereas, you go to this one place, like let's say a bank, okay, you go to this one bank and they're all nice to you, and that's why you use them. And then, you go to another bank and they're rude to you, or whatever. It's like, they're both unqualified, right? Like, not to pick on banks, but like, whatever. The process ultimately is unqualified. So like it comes down to that contest of social contrivance. Like, oh, in an ideal perfect world, that whole process wouldn't be necessary at all, because just put your money under your mattress, or just, don't even use money, have gold, have something else. It shows you some artificial overextended process that you're deferring to, but it's being treated as though it's absolute and you're being controlled by it. And so, that's what it comes down to, is like, you'll pick on the one who doesn't overcompensate or turn it into a contest that way, but not that the whole process is unqualified and functional. Like, you don't really need it, but they try to make it seem that way. So if you value other people and you value social contrivance, but it's used to specifically in service of one contrivance state. So, they're being nice, but they're only being nice in relation to their job and to do with that bank, to try to get you to use that bank, or they're using it only in relation to their job and that place and that incentive. So that's this concept of separation again. Is like, you would separate the two. Work is work, that is that. Make that process as efficient as possible. Some people do it for that reason. And then social contrivance in your personal life, instead of trying to mix the two and use it as a pretense to fluff up that one dependent overextended pretense, that one entity or that one business or whatever. So that's actually shallow and artificial, because you're trying to use that as like a current social currency, basically. But you know what I mean? That it shouldn't come down to that. It shouldn't have anything to do with it if the process is sound and efficient. Alright, so let me check my Bluetooth. It might mess something up actually, because it might connect to my my phone that I'm streaming on, not the other phone. So I better make sure. I haven't used this in a super long time. The Bluetooth headphone. Okay, let's try it. And then I'll try to charge the... I love how big of an ordeal that was, how long it took me to do that. Okay, here we go. Just so I can listen to music or something at least, I mean, which I often don't even do or don't like to do, but it's, some of these drives are getting a little bit long-winded. I better make sure that it tried to connect to my other thing too. Why is it so quiet? Like I can barely hear it. It must be the headphone itself. Okay, whatever. So yeah, let me check out some random. I was doing that for a while. I could react to random videos or something. Hang on. So yeah, let's compare one thing. Okay, like in this modern day of the age of the internet and stuff, like, oh, these kids like the internet or something more than other people, right? Social interaction. But in a way, that's sort of validated, arguably, depending on how you use it, of course. But like you have, on one hand, oh, the internet has everything in human history, every book, every movie, everything, right? All the research, all the information, all the knowledge, versus, oh, a person that you're forced to interact with, like something limited and myopic, and often comes down to the same thing anyway, like, oh, let's do this thing together. Like, so the false value of the collective or the externality, that, like, something is more or less valuable just based on other people being involved, which is just a human glorification propaganda kind of thing. Bluetooth headphone has like a delay on it. Like I'll watch each video and it'll take a second for it to start playing the audio. So maybe I'll just listen to music. There's a lot of this trend of the whole hidden camera glasses stuff that people do that's a little weird, like trying to pick up girls and stuff and then they'll show it on that, which is a weird thing to do. Like they're doing it for content. And they're recording them without their knowledge or consent. So some people might argue like, oh, you're in public, so there's no expectation of privacy. But there's also no expectation that somebody is specifically talking to you for the sole purpose of recording you and that interaction and using you as content and potentially making money off of it. Like, that's a little different than like, okay, you're in public and you're just walking by and they happen to see you. That's one thing. But when you're literally doing that, I don't know. It just feels like if you were to do that in any other context, it wouldn't be allowed. But now it's okay because they're not aware of it. Like if you ask them, oh, by the way, I recorded the whole thing, are you okay with it? Then they'll say, oh, that's weird. Maybe, no, I'm not. Let me just tell you like what's in my suggested. Like one of those, mine taking a picture of me. LeBron kept it short after the Lakers lost to the Thunder. Some Yu-Gi-Oh clip. They made the dumbest decision of their lives. It's probably some Mr. Beast type of thing. A lot of the stuff I just watch in shorts. Or, oh no, this is something else. Me voting out some girl from a thing. But yeah, like a lot of that you see in social media and stuff is stimuli acme related because again, repression leads to obsession. You make a whole big thing out of it, this false absolute that you're kind of it turns it into like some weird contest or some weird thing that people are obsessed with it constantly. But it just, again, it just is a natural process, but people don't see it that way. So again, part of that glorification or repression makes people obsess over it in those ways. Otherwise, you would say, what's the big deal? It's just a basic process. You're just talking to somebody. But it turns into like, oh, look at this riz, look at this thing. It's kind of again, you'd separate it, you'd kind of just treat it for what it is instead of obsessing over like it's a big deal and using it in like this petty, possessive, pseudo-prostitution way that like you're trying to use it as a privilege to get something back, you want something for it. Right, it's really strange. Oh, here we go. This is cool. ESPN, Skip couldn't keep up the pleasantries, like him talking to Stephen A. again. He was the driving force, and he did choose him. He became the driving force of ESPN overall. But he's said a lot of trash about CM since then. Or no, he's just making fun of the takes himself. Oh, he still has energy to do it. Oh, he's getting triggered. He's getting triggered. That's kind of good. Though Skip is a legend, though. Like, even though people hate him, right? Like, he kind of knows what he's doing. He's trolling. And that's always harder to do, right? Being devil's advocate than being the commentate, saying what people don't want to hear. And oftentimes he's been right on a lot of things that, you know, you would hate at the time, but then it turns out to be true. Or this is something I've watched a lot lately, just these, and some of them I know are fake. Like, I've seen some video that was actually kind of proving that, or showing some of the same people right over and over. But top-notch gang. Okay, let's react to this. Smoking thug in the hood. But that won't be enough, because there'll be other videos named the same exact thing, so we gotta be more specific. It's Smoking Thug in the Hood, posted January 6, 2026, and starting in 3, 2, 1. It's just a short. What's up? The way you chillin', the way you sitting here, the way you chilling here, the way you're standing here, like they're not doing anything, but that's his favorite line. Why are you getting mad? Why are you getting mad? And then he lets them walk away and calm down, and then he says it again. I would just like walk away. Like, I wouldn't. Yeah, some of them might be fake, but if they were all fake, then it's a lot of effort to go through to do that. He's got 3 million subs. Some of his pranks are insanely elaborate too. Like, there's one where he has like a whole courtroom of people, like a judge, and like, how is he even doing that? He's like renting out a courtroom, and he's I don't know. Some of them are highly illegal. See, like, this one's a repeat of an old clip, but it's the same clip. So, what was his problem? May 7, 2026, starting in 3, 2, 1. Where he's like, you see me at work, you see me at work. Bro's talking to Nemo, trying to find Nemo. And then he says, get out of my park. Not it'll be the most anticipated reveal ever is Alfredo. Who is Alfredo, dude? No wonder that answers the question, why did they want the head of Alfredo Garcia in the movie Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia? Because that's what this dude was doing. He's attributed with every single accusation of Alfredo told me to do this, Alfredo told me to do that. Like, everybody wants this guy's head because he's giving all the orders. So that's a nice tie into the only famous Alfredo that I know, Alfredo Garcia from Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia by Sam Peckinpah, or wait, was it? Hold on, who is that? It must be, right? The guy who made The Wild Bunch. It was a weird kind of movie, but it's in some ways kind of great. Like, yeah, Sam Peckinpah. It had like this weird existential, almost discomfort to it, where I'd love to see somebody else's reaction to it for the first time, like what they really think about it. But yeah, like think about life in that way. Like if you observe everything deeply, fully, versus like everybody takes like a myopic fragment out of it. And so, let me switch to charging my other phone now. Like we got a whole setup here, like crazy. Okay, so this one's 100% battery, this one's 36% battery. The other Bluetooth headphone's charging, while this one's at like 50%. Yeah, I'm just gonna listen to music for a bit and just relax now. It's been hard to maintain this as long as I sometimes like to. So you got about an hour left, a little bit less. Okay. But that's what you can do objectively, is observe like the nature of a process instead of seeing the initial. Instead of being taken in by the initial or the specific, you see the nature of the larger process, which might seem boring or bad, but it just shows you everything's kind of arbitrary, not exclusive to everything else, so you can easily be controlled by it. Kind of like, oh, you support your sports team just because you live there. You support your country just because you were born there. But there's no real standard basis behind it. So if you were born somewhere else, you would just support that too. Arguably, like, it's not really based on anything. Just seems so underutilized though. For a Friday, you would think, I don't know. Get some nice views of the mountains and stuff. Would you be able to identify, like GeoGuess, or guess what mountain that exactly is? Yeah, like there's a lot of things like absolutist, peace with finality, peace with even arguably death, peace with, you know, they'd rather be free than in a subversive state because they define value by the mind, not by the physical state, so they don't really care about that. They'll sleep on the ground, but at least they're free in mind instead of being reduced to a half-mass human function that gets gratification and overcompensation from a half-mass state that uses like a pretense of, like, because it's the peace with the measure. Like, you're aware of the nature of the process, so you're at peace with it, or you tolerate it, but you're never insisting upon it or vouching for it. It's conditional. It's like, okay, it serves the purpose in this era to control people or to reach a certain outcome, but it's not absolute, right? It's conditional. It's everything. So people don't want to see that themselves, like that they're being controlled, just like everybody else throughout history. You would see like, oh, this is what people believed in this time period to cope with the control that they were experiencing by the government there, by other things there. but you won't see that you're doing the same thing in a different way, right? But yet you'll consider those things positive or essential. Like, why do you desire entertainment and escapism? Why do you desire, why do you desire drinking, smoking, whatever, alcohol and stuff? It's to distract and overcompensate for what would otherwise be a subversive state. And so like, would it be allowed? That would be one of the coolest things to do ever. Would it be allowed to like fly a drone up like through those trees and in the mountains? Like, even if I lose the drone, I'm willing to live with that. But it's like, that'd be one of the coolest things ever, because it'd be a little too difficult to do that at will, just to like, oh, I'm gonna hike up every mountain that I see. But that would be kind of cool, just to kind of see everything freely. Like, nobody's really gonna catch you or do anything, but this road is almost too pleasant of a drive, I'm surprised. Go debate. Skip Bayless tries to defend having LeBron. Yeah, that's crazy, though. That's okay. I'll watch that later, but I'll watch it later. I don't have the energy right now, but that's crazy. Like, I would have him like it probably, maybe 3 or 4. I would have had him pass Kareem just when he passed Kareem on the scoring. So now, like, you might think, well, he's the leading scorer, but I still go by peak performance. So was he better at his peak than Will Chamberlain? Absolutely not. Was he better at his peak than Michael Jordan? I'd say no. So you could put him 3. Some people would say the same thing about Oscar, though. At his peak, Oscar is great. And when people talk about competition, I love that, because it's like, who is LeBron facing on a nightly basis that's really, you'll point to some great players, some big names, but like defenders, like what great defender is he facing every night? He faces Kawhi Leonard once and then throughout his career. He faces, who are some of his toughest defensive matchups? The one I really think of is Kawhi. Who am I forgetting? Like, at his position, at least, like, you could say some centers like Rudy Gobert. Like, yeah, if we had Will Chamberlain, Rudy Gobert would really be shutting him down, right? Like, even though Bill Russell couldn't, even though, like, come on, Kareem couldn't. That's what I hate about that, is like, Jules Gambit, the cloud chasing chess channel, 20K subscribers. This is where the stimuli does enter into things. And then if you point that out, then it's like, oh, you're picking on them, it's somehow negative. It's like, but other people are not benefiting from the stimuli, or it depends how much you're playing into it, but it's like, clearly there is a benefit. So people play dumb about it or something like that. Because you'll point out, like, oh, but it's personality. But a lot of people have good personality. Or, oh, it's you're good at chess, but there's thousands of people better than you at chess. So, like, don't give me that with the whole boom of this, but blame the audience too. I don't know. It's just the amount of effort you have to put in a different way would be much greater. We're also getting a pretty good. This could work. I should get paid by Elon Musk for doing this. Like, I'm showing you where Starlink does and doesn't work, and like, so like, I'm showing you, okay, whatever area I'm in right now, Starlink is working here, evidently, because the stream is working. So at moderate utility as well. So it's kind of like, I'm showing like all these places where it either does work, or if we have issues where it doesn't work. Here's a challenge: don't do face cam. Just nobody do face cam ever. And then what happens, right? And you can do that now in ex post facto justification once you're already established. But whether you're appealing to cult of personality or stimulacmy, either of those are not Lake Placid. U.S. Olympic Training Center. Huh. find out all these things that you never know, like the biggest Walmart in the world in Albany. Right, I didn't know that it was there. And it's like not too wide. Like the width of it is pretty much the same as a regular Walmart, but it's like long. It goes like back super far. And it might not even be that much bigger than a regular, like just a little bit bigger. Or it'll be more like a Sam's Club almost. Of all the places I would have expected it to be, that's not the one, right? Like Albany's a decently sized city, but it's not like that big of a deal. And there aren't any in New York City. So I like how they always use that as a pretense. Oh, it's to support local businesses. That's why we stop Walmart from coming there. Meanwhile, you have Target there. You have other big stores there. So like, come on. Right, it's a very selective thing that you're trying to take credit for, but... So the thing is that... I love that. Deers in the next 32 miles. So why not just say fucking, okay, just open your eyes and just be weary for deers, period, all the time. Like, normally it'll say like next mile or just upcoming. Yeah, like everything is outward, so you need ego gratification, but you're in an exuberant state. There's nothing to really qualify it. The one who's aware of that is their fault, not those who seek gratification for what is an overextended subversive state. But that's often what like social contrivance or gratification is about. Like, oh, you lack the ability to do this, so they have to label you. Not that they're just selfish and they're in an unqualified state that they'll play dumb and look the other way when there's no actual basis for the state that they're in and structure, dependent over standard pretense, etc. Non-amalgam theory, right? So they'll use social contrivance as pretense gratification rather than to reinforce their exuberant state, rather than actually having a standard. So it's your lack of ability to overcompensate and gratify them in that state, not that state requires that, not that they're selfish, not that they're taking ego gratification, that they're egotistical, not that they even take it from things that are not really that significant, just social interaction arbitrarily. It's the fact that, not that they don't have a measure, that they're in a half-mass state. Yeah, pretend like you have infinite resources or means, or even better, you're a minimalist who doesn't really value things on a superficial level, but you're still controlled on behalf of things like that, or that would free you of them. So because like that, the minimalist is more consistent than even the absolutist there, because you would always be chasing a zero-sum end. Like no matter, even if you're the world's first trillionaire or whatever, you could always have more, so you can never really win that. Whereas if you don't value it and you're at peace with as little as possible, highest elevation here. Why is that necessary to tell us? Like, it's a cool fact, but oh god. Okay, so we got about 40 minutes left. I would never get this tired while driving. I don't know what it is. Just some of these roads kind of get to me a little bit. So I'm listening to this one song that I've listened to like a million times, Mr. Twin Sister Meet the Frownies. This is like one of those that I just play on loop all the time. What else? Do we have Boa Duvet from Lane, Serial Experiment Lane. It's like slowed and reverb, like that whole trend that you have. Like, let's see what's in my mix. Somber, Back to Being Friends is a pretty good song. tame Impala, let it happen, which was in all the chess edit videos for some reason for a while. Yeah, like the fact that the absolutists would have to qualify it first, like they would have to do all that, and then it's like, oh, you have the privilege to be able to think, or you have the privilege to be able to question contrivance. It's like, even if you think that's the privilege, like everybody should have that privilege then, instead of saying, oh, that's the only reason why you're doing it. But there's an impure incentive in the half-mass human function to reinforce and indignantly insist, but to not think objectively and to treat thinking as the enemy because it's at odds with their contrivance state would trigger their cognitive dissonance. A lot of conflict, though, is human created. Like it doesn't come from the inherent conflict of, oh, doing a job that's hard or something like that. It comes from the overextended cognitive dissonance of an unqualified empirical contrivance state, right? And abiding by its specific mandates rather than some inherent practice. If you were to do that out in nature, if you were to do that freely, inherently living in the woods and whatever, it's like the way you do something is up to you. And you might say, oh, it'd be a lower quality of life or something like that, but it would be logically more consistent and have less cognitive dissonance associated with it because it's not as overextended. And it's also like everything you'd be doing would be directly related to your own survival. So you would be choosing that. And so it would be more a reaction to nature than a reaction to the artificial contrivance of people. So that's why it's a net negative. Like, could the modern world be way better than it is objectively? So it could be, but the fact that it's not is the fault of people and government or corporations or whatever. And so less is more. You don't have to take credit for their flaws that they impose upon you and try to project to control you. That's really the sign of RBO, rule by omission, contrived state. Things will be projected onto you that have nothing to do with you. So some asexual person comes from out in the woods into society, and they'll immediately be projected, oh, based on their appearance, such and such, or oh, they're looking around and oh, they must be perving on some girls or something. That'll show you how the people in that society are controlled. It says more about the observer than what is being observed, because it shows you that's how they're controlled, but it says nothing about that person, right? The truth doesn't matter to contrivance. It's going to reinforce and project whatever it's already controlled by. So yeah, that was Boa Duvet. Not that you can hear, obviously. I don't like doing that. I guess I could, and probably you wouldn't get in trouble for it, but I don't want to mess with it. And now I'm listening to Somber, Back to Being Friends. Or I can do a format like that. Whatever I see an ad for, I have to react to it. It's like I've seen some ad for, I don't even know what it was, I skipped it, but just because like sometimes I can't decide what to watch if I am going to react to something. There's so many major shows that I've never seen, like Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones and stuff like that, so I thought if I ever do get around to watching them, I may as well react to them as well. I would almost do like a book reading, but then that could be like copyright issue, because like I'll read through a whole book and I'll do it on stream or something, but you can't really do that because then, right, it's like, oh, you're stealing the book, because that's the whole thing. You could do like a section of it, but yeah, that's always one trap with contrivance, is like it's your inability to acquiesce or overcompensate for the process, but you do that in service of contrivance. The only reason why you have to do that is because of the fault of people in power, or why didn't they just make the process better? You're deferring to them in the first place and giving them authority. Then you have to also overcompensate for their flawed process that they put in place as a result of the power that you gave them, that they could have easily, whether through error or ulterior motive, the end result is it comes on you. Like, oh, don't you get it? Can't you overcompensate for it? Stop complaining. But it's like you're doing that in service of a contrivance state that's not properly designed. why don't they do it? And you think, like, oh, like, that's entitlement. But it's not entitlement. Like, then let somebody be free and don't monopolize nature itself and don't control every aspect of their life and don't tell them what to do. And then, fine. But you can't have it both ways, where you have so much power and they're deferring everything to you, but then you're also telling them what to do or expecting them to sacrifice and acquiesce. The sacrifice is inherent. The sacrifice is that they're not free to be in nature, and that you've monopolized nature all around them from even before they're old enough to think for themselves. The compromise is that they've been indoctrinated in youth before they could even think for themselves. The compromise, the sacrifice is that they reduce themselves to a half-mast state where they're not reaching their full potential, where they're not fully aware in mind or objective in thought, where they're not self-aware. They let themselves be reduced to a half-mast human function. That's the sacrifice. That's the compromise. So now you want more on top of that. You want them to socially reinforce that same subversive contrivance state. You want them to defer more and overcompensate for the flawed process of unqualified empirical authority. Like, they've already done that. They've already sacrificed their inherent potential and let them be reduced to a half-mast contrivance state, to a lowest common denominator state. So now you say, oh, well, you're basically in a position to do it kind of retroactively. You've been reduced to that indoctrinated state, but now that indoctrinated state is used as a basis to rationalize controlling people. Like, oh, that justifies it, but that's your deference and your sacrifice. Okay, next song is what is this? Tame Impala, Let It Happen. Got about a half hour left. Oh, man. Or like some of these bands I'll know only for one song. That is an iconic sign, though. Look at that dude. The way that guy put that motel sign is so great that you can see it from that angle. That's crazy. Yeah, you have to realize, like, everything around you is carefully prepared and curated, but then if you think about it, you're the problem. Don't think too deeply about it. It's all absolute. Meanwhile, the government is constantly thinking about how to control you. Corporations are constantly thinking about how to influence you, but you can't think as the individual, so you're doing too much of a service to them by letting them have all the curated, carefully prepared, established structure to control you, every aspect of your life. But you can't think yourself. At least think as much as they do. At least be aware of the nature of the process, how they control you. And then if you're okay with it, that's fine. But what people really mean is they're not okay with it if they were to think about it, whatever. Or like everything is ego projected, but it's really not. It could be a measure, absolutist. Everything's projected like non-base of self. But then why would you defer to unqualified empirical authority? But yeah, like, it's assumed that this is kind of the problem, right? How are people controlled? Because everything is projected that's non-base of self. So, oh, it's selfish if you're too focused or measure basis or whatever. If you value time or something, it must be all zero-sum non-base of self, zero-sum means. But if that was true, then you wouldn't let authority exist, because you'd say, well, they're only doing it for zero-sum self as well. They have to keep up appearances and pretenses that's about something else. But it's one of two things. There is no measure, there is no absolute, there is no standard, there is no meaning. Everything is just non-based of self-interest, is used to control people, but then there's no basis to control them then, right? So if there is an absolute value and meaning and standard, then it would be held accountable consistently, and you would have the measure as well. And if it's not, then it's arbitrary, and then there's no basis to control people. So either it should be held accountable to that, so you're being controlled at half-mast, like, there is no absolute, but you pretend there's an absolute so you can be controlled by the false absolute. And then you're not allowed to fully practice it either. And so then it's arbitrary, there's no basis for structure. That's why religions are like a one-size-fits-all. Like, as long as it leads to you obeying the current government and corporate-owned world, then oh, that's okay. Like, let's have a religion that contradicts with that. Then what happens? Right? Talk about the illusion of choice. Or like, let's look at this concept here, that you're taught and trained as a young person when you're growing up to defer to unqualified empirical authority. So okay, you defer, and then oh, you're playing video games or something to distract yourself. So, oh, but now look at these kids playing video games. They're only doing it because you inhibit and restrict every other area of their life, and now they have to distract themselves from the cognitive dissonance of your unqualified empirical authority by doing that, and you even use it as a tool to control them too. So now when they grow up, or even like they let their mind wander and stuff like that, because that's the only place they can be free is in their mind. So now, as they grow up, now they retain that, and now it's like, okay, now they're more familiar with their mind and thinking, and they seek refuge in folly, favoritism, entertainment, escapism, and stuff like that. And then you blame them for that or use that to validate the state. But really, it's like, that's the basis that society used to control them, and it was only the only freedom they gave them. So it was a process that they created, and it was a reaction to their unqualified authority. So now you use that, oh, look at them obsessed with these, fictional things. Yes, because you controlled everything else. You didn't let them be free in nature or do anything. So they were doing it in reaction to you, but now you blame them for it or hold it against them. No, it was you. It was you who made them do that, try to control them with that. It was a refuge that they sought from your unqualified empirical authority, and it was so you defer to that authority, but then you seek refuge in the mind. But now it's like, oh look, now they're finding that the mind is more valuable and credible than people are. So now what? Now you blame them for that too, that they're not socially contriving. So you can't have it both ways, right? They sought refuge because of the unqualified, so they deferred, but now you're upset because now that reveals the artifice of the process. So the same distraction and deference to that process now ends up revealing the process. Rather than like, oh, they think too much now. But yeah, everything is like specified and personalized, but it doesn't make sense because that would just reflect the nature of the process, but people are initial minded. To imagine somebody who would sacrifice everything, and they're doing everything for a measure, and they're doing it for a certain purpose, maybe to reveal the truth against contrivance, objective inherent reality versus the contrivance state. There'd be, oh, it's an excuse just to not do the contrivance state, but or to be free, right? That's the excuse or the reason. But it's like, why should they need to do that to be free, right? Yes, they want to be free inherently and not be restricted, but that's not an outward position. The outward position is restricting them in the first place and trying to associate it with bread and circuses, overcompensation, machination to try to justify it. The next 15 miles out. Why don't you just say deer, period? Like, now we're on the Beach House Space Song. Just these are like not even ones I'm specifically looking up. It's just a playlist, like my mix of stuff that I've listened to a lot or in the past, just kind of randomly arranged together. Yeah, this is a pretty pleasant, almost boring road. Not a lot of traffic. Pretty smooth, although it's a little hilly, up and down with the hills. Well, that's the coolest idea ever. I hiked to it. Speaking of the stimuli acme, I should go to the top of a mountain and hold that up and be like, yeah, this is the stimuli acme. The stimuli acme is preserved in this era. Like, that's one way to demonstrate it. How many ways do I have to show it? there's always like a projection and control. People like, oh, they must want something, but what they want is a free, inherent, universal tendency, not the specific. And that's the one thing absolutists seek: finality. They value time. They would they would not seek permission, right, for something that should be free to do anyway, or like against the projections of others, like, oh, it must be about this, but what if it's not about that? Then what? That's their projection, that's what they're obsessed with, that's what they're controlled by. And absolutists would be direct anyway. If they wanted something, they'd be direct about it. But it's their own possessive contrivance that they're controlled by. You expose how insecure they are about it. Right, that's how false duality works. Like, no matter what, you could be exposing the artifice of the process. Oh, that's just emperor has no clothes fallacy. That's just because you're not able, you lack the ability to do it. But if it really is a sound, absolute process, it doesn't come down to your ability or not. It would be, the process would be sound either way. That shows you it's a process that depends on that conditional, contrivance, selective awareness, which is arbitrary and then could apply to anything. So it's not absolute. It's conditional, and you can still do it, but then you're all insecure about it. You suffer the conflict of contrivance, and it's certainly not absolute, exclusionary to everything else, but that's what you have to create a false absolute to specify. The conflict is often cognitive dissonance, not zero-sum means. It's like that you would be doing something in service of unqualified empirical authority, false absolute, but it's never absolute. It's all, everything is outward, everything is specific. And the one thing I want you to understand with that is basically the fact that now we're on Bulletproof, I wish I was by Radiohead, classic. Like, the conflict is of the infinite objective mind versus the limited physical state, or the conflict is of your infinite potential versus the half-mass human function state you're reduced to, right, by indoctrination, by structure. So those are the conflicts, right, that are created by people, by society, versus inherent conflicts, which could be, oh, you're trying to stay alive in nature and stuff like that. But at least that's consistent and more naturally occurring, although by today's standards it wouldn't be, because you would be pushed out by human influence still and affected by it. So, oh, you'll suffer from pollution in certain areas, or you'll suffer from the influence of corporations, or even the way wildlife is arranged in the world would not be natural anymore, right? We push them all out to certain areas, so it'll be more or less dangerous based on human influence. So it's like a specific machination process would take credit for every other era, for the technology that just exists, right? Like, that they don't have a monopoly over. Every country would do that, so it doesn't validate the specific one, but they'll use it as a prop and a pretense. Or even like parents will do that. Like, you didn't make that technology, right? It just happens to exist, and it reveals the artifice of contrivance that you're trying to use as means validation to control. That's where, long-form posture doesn't make a claim, but it'll seem like that when it reveals the claims of contrivance that people are insecure about and project. So they'll frame objective reality and inherent truth as a claim because they're trying to do it in false duality to their own false absolute contrivance. But you'll realize that contrivance itself is the claim, and the objective reality is just objective reality, to which the contrivance is a response. So now they're caught in that trap of seeing that it's outward and it's inconsistent and it's not absolute. You're kind of revealing the claim by asking a question, and that question will be framed as the claim because it exposes the artifice of the contrivance. You're not arguing for another contrivance state or something else. I don't know if like certain parts of this frame have been cut off, but it's pretty impressive if it lasted the whole way. That is, no matter where I am, this thing is something else. The Starlink. But yeah, like pretend you're the richest person in the world and you're a trillionaire, then nothing would really mean anything to you now, because it's like, okay, you have everything you want, so what's the big deal? Or pretend you're a minimalist and you don't want anything, that nothing would mean anything to you. So most people are controlled in a half-assed gratifying way, where it's like, oh, you're competing over this half-assed state that you've been reduced to deliberately by a curated design of corporation and the government that control the world. Like, that one went fast, or did I skip it or something? Chamber of reflection slowed. But yeah, like simply being aware and objective is somehow negative, because contrivance requires a specific deference and the true value in actions versus not taking credit, unconditional amalgam theory versus the specific reinforcement dependent over standard pretense. That's why the fallacy of permission. It's like a measure and everything's projected to the self. But it doesn't apply to you, so why do you have to justify the projections of others just because they're not aware of the nature of the process, just because they're not at peace with the nature of the process, just because they're slaves to contrivance that requires projection of others, does not mean that they apply to you, right? That you would have to justify things that don't even apply, but they're projected onto you because they're not at peace with the state that they're in and controlled by. So even if you eat the foods made by unqualified empirical authority corporations, you're doing it only for the end, and even then it's in excess and you would feel bad about it. Amalgam theory, absolutist measure, but you're doing it to reveal the nature of the process. You're not doing it to vouch for it, but you could still be more of a minimalist obviously in that way. I'm just saying, like, it's conditional, but like you'd be condemned, like it's negative for you that you're aware of the nature of the process and you feel bad about it, or you have cognitive dissonance with it, versus them, oh, they're at peace with it and they don't think about it and they don't have cognitive dissonance with it, even though they would, or it's still the same process. So what's worse? At least you have cognitive dissonance with that process. They don't, because they don't think about it. So you'd rather be unaware of the nature of the process and indignantly insist upon it. So again, it's a contrivance state that controls everything, monopolizes nature itself, it indoctrinates you before you can think for yourself, controls everything, influences every area of your life, you defer to it, you're inhibited by it, it curates the outcome, it's reducing you to structure. When you're growing up, you're not allowed to do anything. It's not that you're not able to do anything, who knows what you'd be capable of doing, but you're not allowed to, you're inhibited, etc. en masse. Some people can overcompensate and still do extraordinary things, don't get me wrong, but it curates the outcome of the lowest common denominator state. It's no accident, right? It's by design, because you're not designed to be the highest quality, highest, best outcome. You're designed to be a lowest common denominator insect to be controlled by these big corporations and government and stuff. So to create like a curated outcome. So what it means is that you're every area of your life is controlled, but then it's like, oh, now you would you would seek something for that, or like, oh, you're entitled, or oh, you lack ability or capability, or that seems to validate the established structure. But just realize that applies to everything then. Every government in history apparently was always right then, because they already existed and had power before you were born or old enough to do anything. So just because they're already established, even if the way that they got established was just by force and killing a bunch of people, that would seem to validate them, I guess, on that basis. Or everything's arbitrary, be aware of the nature of the process, but you would like, that wouldn't validate, or even like means validation that parents try to hold over children's heads the same way that society, government, corporations try to do. It's like they're already established, so it's not that you're deferring that to them, like, oh, here you have monopoly over nature, whereas nobody really owns nature. It's that, oh, they've earned it, but you didn't have the chance to earn it. You're a 5-year-old kid, so like, is that validated that they have that influence and power, which they then use to indoctrinate you into a state where you accept them? So this is the end of beginning, the when I'm back in Chicago thing. That should almost be the title of the song. Like, that's what everybody knows from it. That's why you'd consider, like, what I'm doing now negative than necessary. I shouldn't have to do this if people thought for themselves, or were objective. It's not a bad song, but that's just the one line that always stands out. Yeah, you'd be aware constantly of all the sacrifice you make, of your inherent potential, of your inherent mind, objective mind, infinite objective mind. So the thing is that I had like a certain expression for that. Like, you defer all those things, or all those things are given to corporations and government, but then that somehow validates them rather than, so that could apply to anything then, because from your perspective as somebody growing up in that world, it's like, oh, your parents hold the means validation over your head, like, oh, that's why you have to do what they say, but that doesn't validate them. You can do that with anything. You can do that with an animal. Like, we're not going to feed you unless you do what we say. That doesn't exactly have much credibility. But even beyond that, it's like, the reason why they have the means is just because they're older, or because they've acquiesced to a contrivance state. You associate the two together. That's why you can control anybody in any era. But it's more than that. It's the fact that it's also the fact that if you're defined by externality, then you let the world control you. Whereas in mind, if you're defined, then you control it, right? You could always be controlled in your physical state. They'll keep you down, they'll keep you poor, they'll keep you reliant, but it doesn't matter. You could be thinking anything in your mind that doesn't have to relate to the physical state that you're in. And when you look at the fact that basically you're in a position to I love that. I live in Peru, by the way. Say that you live in that, you control people. Like, you look lonely, I can fix it. But that's not really a song. That's from Blade Runner or something. I don't know what the song is. Home Residence. I haven't heard this one in a while. But no, what I'm saying is that that sort of means validation would seem to justify anything. But not only do they hold the means validation over you, but it's the duality of deference and means validation. You defer, and then that authority uses what it has to hold over your head. But it only has that in large part if you defer to it. So it's like, defer monopoly over nature itself to big corporations, then they seem to be validated by what they have. Or even government, you pay them taxes and you defer to them. So it's like the accountability versus the authority fallacy of like, does having authority validate somebody or should it be held accountable? But the way that people often have that nature of sucking up to authority, it turns into that. Like, you vote somebody in or whatever, they have power, but you should hold that power accountable. They're accountable to you and be like, okay, because you have that power, we got to watch you and make sure everything you do is held accountable, instead of, oh no, that seems to validate you and that makes what you do right. But that's often how it's perceived, and again, people have that mentality, tendency to try to suck up. So this fallacy of ego and permission, of simply being free or simply being neutral. They pretend you have the absolutist measure, but you're not allowed to do it, or you're perceived in the physical way. In contrast, like, you look at what you would have to do. Like, look at what I'm doing now. This is what you would have to do. Like, but what I'm saying is, you defer. So like, oh, you're a 5-year-old kid and you're not allowed to go outside. You have curfews. You're not allowed to do this and that. You're not allowed to go out in nature. And you'll say, oh, you lack the ability to do it. But first of all, you're not allowed to try to foster that ability. You're not allowed to even try. So, oh, it's for your own safety, benevolent to protect you, but it assumes that your lack of ability and kind of forces your lack of ability. So not only is, oh, that means validation being held over your head, but you're prevented from being free. So you're made to be reliant and you're deferring to it. So it's means validation that you never had a chance to acquire, and it's deference to unqualified empirical authority. So not only is that not validation, that's like a double strike. It's the fact that, oh, they have something that you didn't have a chance to acquire, so that doesn't validate them at all. And they're preventing you from acquiring it on your own, and you're deferring to that prevention. There's a self-fulfilling way, almost equivalent to training animals, that you would look at. Yeah, if you look at the zero-sum means bred in circuses, that would seem to validate anything. Most people are selfish, gratified enough to do that. So for the amount of exuberance that people pursue in their lives, they don't even know what they want. It's all overcompensation. For all the exuberance and excesses, they don't have any shame within amalgam theory. Not saying they have to do it, but clearly doesn't gratify or validate them at all. Everything is non-basis, zero-sum, self-insistence, subversive process, appearance, pretense, overcompensation. So they'd rather overcompensate in excess for the cognitive dissonance associated with the contrived state than to address the contrived state and actually think about it. So like, with all the technology and means and resources and machination process that you have in the modern day, why would you would rather indulge in those elevated bred circuses to a greater degree than to simply use them as a basis to be free in mind finally? Because throughout history, people would say it the other way. They'd say, oh, we couldn't be free in mind because we were so subject to this tyrannical force that we were subject to, right? Kings and dictators and stuff that was more explicit, emperors and stuff. No, okay, we had to reduce our mind to a half-mad state to survive it. All that oppression. Although arguably, you should use that as a way to free yourself of it and hold that accountable, right? But okay, so you would use adverse situations and say, oh, I'm just trying to survive, so that's why we can't think. But now in a day of excess, the modern day of excesses and conveniences and luxuries, now what excuse do you have? You'll say, oh, well, I'm just trying to survive, but you know what I mean? Like, for all the excess means and machination process that people have, shouldn't that be used as a basis to free them and let them think freely finally? So at one point it was like, oh, we were too poor and too oppressed to think freely. Now we're too rich to care to think. We'll settle for the bread and circuses, and we're too exuberant and too excesses, lost in our excesses, and we're, you'll also use, you'll use the excess of means and machination also to distract yourself now from thinking. So at no point are you actually ever thinking. This is Assumptions, the one with that goofy dance that you always see on social media and stuff. Or yeah, like when people wouldn't be able to explain something like the human variable or absolutist tendency or other minimalism. They would have to project it into something negative. It's a decent song, and there are lyrics to it too. I forget. There'll be some of these songs that have very limited lyrics and they're just known for the same one over and over, or basically for the instrumental. But you get this like competition of weird social contrivance of like a limited initial basis. Who can reduce something to an initial state, but no true value can be achieved that way. So who can do something in short form or hot takes? You know, it's preconceived social contrivance that people desire, but they don't want to be aware that it's preconceived, but oh, the person went to sales school for this many years to be able to do it. Like, so you don't want to see how it came to be, the origin point fallacy. But what if you're aware of the nature of the process, that everything is a process? But people who seem to be at peace with the contrivance, they have a constant imbalance, or they're just selfish and like, well, there's not amalgam theory, no basis to control other people, is used as a pretense to dependent over center pretense on their exuberant state. So amalgam theory is lost on that, but everywhere you go, there's the same thing. So there's like some night 69 thing, and there's like a few things I didn't recognize on there. So now we're bordering on Vermont and on Canada both. Like monopoly over nature itself is a fascinating concept. See where my other phone's battery is. 67. Or like, let's look at that concept as a final thing, like letting people or some ideas have monopoly over expression. It's like, oh, there's the 6-7 meme and there's the 6-9 meme, like 69. So like over time, everything will have an association to it. Like every hand expression, I always say that, like, what if some dictator used the thumbs up as a sign? Then we'd never be able to thumbs up again, or it'll be banned the way that, you know, certain other symbols are. Like, you'll let people have monopoly over those things forever, so that every expression will have something associated and preconceived with it. So everything will be controlled by that basis. Yeah, like a minimalist who'd be at peace with something, but other people don't allow you to be. Shooting stars. Some of these songs maybe I've discovered just from memes and stuff. But the reality is that, like, minimalists could be appease something, but society wouldn't allow it, or they'll project it's negative, or like, oh, they lack the ability to do something, not that they don't want to do it. Right, like they don't need the excessive, they're not selfish like that. They don't need the zero-sum means, or what is it that? Huh. Oh, okay. Yeah, always remember that unqualified empirical authority. There's no basis to like you can always game the system, exploit the system, doesn't mean you vouch for the state. Often inability to do with cognitive dissonance, but non-unconditional false negative reveals the artifice, control, nature of a process dependent over extended pretense. Unqualified, specific, needless. Right, so you would want to see the insistence upon it. Do your zero-sum process, but it's unqualified, and don't insist upon it. And then it also puts you in a position to basically 99, okay, I read it 69. Right, you create your own oppressors, your own rulers. You build them up, right? You created all these things. Older generation created all these things. Now you have to suffer from being subject to them. And if you don't, then that's your fault. Your inability to cope and acquiesce to contrive a state. Like the minimalists would be at peace with certain things, but they wouldn't need it. But it'd be projected. Like you're not allowed to be at peace with sleeping on the ground or doing something. It'll be projected into a negative, or, oh, you lack the ability to do this thing. But, oh, no, what if they're just not as selfish as you and gratified by that? Like, including social contrivance. Like, oh, lack of ability to socially contrive, not that they don't derive any ego from it, or that they, What happened? This is the town of Plattsburgh. Has anybody ever streamed the town of Plattsburgh? Maybe not, because it's kind of obscure. And even I wasn't too aware of it. I'm going to have a whole collection of these random places that I go to. Oh yeah, let's go here for a second. Car washes are one thing I kind of never need to use and validate, like, just let the rain do it, it's one of those things. This is a kind of bad visual for all these. It's but no, that's what people like. They don't like to be aware of the nature of a process, so it's kind of like they want to be controlled by it, or they are controlled by it, but they don't want to be aware of it as they're being controlled. So the awareness is the issue, not the process. The process is the same. So if it was negative, it's still negative. If it's not negative, it's not negative. But instead, it's got to be the the appearance or the awareness that turns into the issue. You shoot the messenger kind of fallacy. I just remember, people require very little, so don't be controlled by things that you don't need to be controlled by. That you don't need, right? Don't struggle for things that you don't even want. Don't be controlled by things you don't even need. Or don't be controlled even by things you do need at a half-mass inherent, or things that you do desire, like the stimuli acme, but you could just do it freely or not do it at all. But instead, you're forced to do it at half-mass, put the false absolute to specify.